Our last speaker is Matt Carpenter, Director of Strathcona County Transit in Sherwood Park, Alberta. He is the CEO for a municipal transit department of 80 conventional buses and 10 specialized buses. Matt has overseen the rapid growth and evolution of Strathcona County Transit since 2007. Some big improvements include the creation of a first master plan for transit services, winning Green Trip grant funding from the Alberta government to build a massive new terminal and park and ride lot currently under construction and opening in 2014, and the restructuring and expansion of the specialized transit service. Between 2007 and 2011, customer satisfaction rates rose by 25%. Strathcona County Transit is also the first transit agency in Alberta to use double-decker buses, the first of which was seen in the Trans Expo show. Matt has a master's degree in urban planning and a certificate in municipal leadership. Welcome, Matt.
Well, thank you, Mary, and thank you, everyone, for being here. I'll do my best to bring up the rear of our presentations today and leave some time for questions, so I'm only going to hit the highlights and then try to move quickly. My presentation is really a story about a small agency intentionally introducing very disruptive change for the benefit of its customers. Strathcona County, as Mary said, is introducing the first double-decker buses in the province of Alberta. You did see, I hope, one of our buses on the floor yesterday. If you've ever been the first to try to do something unproven, you'll understand and appreciate the difficulties that just come with being the first ones through the door sometimes. This was also a relatively very large change for a small agency. As Mary described, we have less than 100 buses. This was a very big effort and extremely disruptive to our normal way of doing business. Internal stakeholder efforts were a major part of it. We think there's going to be a big payoff for that disruption in terms of customer comfort and satisfaction going forward. It's also a great example of putting customers at the center of your decision making. I have a couple of specific examples about double-decker planning that I'll share with you, but really we thought about this presentation and recognized, change is change. It doesn't really matter if you're introducing new technology or new policy or new management techniques. There are commonalities to change and making change happen, especially when it's difficult. So we tried to think about our 6-year odyssey of bringing this bus to Alberta and what lessons we could learn that would be useful to all of you in terms of generalizable lessons for any change initiative, any agency, any time, any place. Hopefully they'll be useful to some of you. Maybe they'll help you go and plan your next big change effort, or maybe you're going to nod your head and find a lot of familiarity with things you've encountered here, in which case it just goes to reassure you that we all have a lot of the same experiences when we're making progress. A little bit of background. Strathcona County is based in the bedroom suburb of Sherwood Park, immediately east of the city of Edmonton. What you need to know about our service: it's suburban express service, longer routes, higher speeds. That's important. Back in 2007, step into the Wayback Machine with me. Alberta is booming. The population is growing very fast. We're already swamped with riders, and we decided to introduce the first regional U-Pass. Okay, now we're really just completely overwhelmed with riders, and for the first time in our agency's history, we have standees on our buses on these longer, higher speed trips. Now, I know a lot of you, bigger agencies, Crimea River, Matt, we have standees all the time. Please understand, for our customers, standing was a new experience, and they didn't like it. And they let us know in no uncertain terms. It was seen as a deterioration in service. We needed to do something to increase our capacity. We had a challenge, though. Our traditional approach to doing that, of buying more buses and putting them in the peak of rush hour, was reaching a point of diminishing returns or outright failure. Alberta, 2007, the unemployment rate is 3%. We cannot hire bus drivers to work for 45 minutes to an hour in the morning and then 12 hours later on a split shift. You just, 8 hours later. You can't hire that kind of people into those conditions. We also ran out of space to house conventional buses. Our barn, we only have one, was full. Maintenance shop was full. We were going to have to make some major investments there and looking for opportunities. This brings me to my first big lesson learned. We had a crisis, and that created a sense of urgency. And if you can harness that sense of urgency that sometimes comes from a crisis, and channel it into a constructive direction, you can really get a lot of power and motivation from a lot of people to make a difficult change. There's also at that time a new industry trend. Double-decker buses were starting to be used across North America for similar services, and we wanted to see if that might be a solution for us. We began a process we came to call the High Capacity Bus Review with a goal of identifying and implementing the best type of bus to meet our customers' needs. We looked at, very methodically, 40-foots, highway coaches, Arctics, and double-deckers. We made a conscious decision. There's literally 100 ways you can look at vehicle procurement and what's important and what the priority is. We consciously decided the number one factor was going to be, what do our customers want? This is our customer service tool. And that really, for our customers, boiled down to one very simple factor: seating. If you don't know already, double-deckers have a lot of seats. The ones we were looking at had about 80, more seats than any other bus than we're aware of. Our approach eventually came to encompass a very detailed cost-benefit analysis, field tests, and knowledge transfer. Here's another big lesson learned. That picture is not our bus. That's a GO Transit bus in the Trans Expo of 2009. We reached out to all the other transit operators in North America. Big advantage we have in our industry is that people share the lessons learned in their communities with each other. That is a huge asset, and I'll mention it again a little bit later. Perhaps the crown jewel of our review was the lease, one-year lease and demonstration project of a double-decker bus in our environment for an entire year. We leased a used one from the manufacturer, Alexander Dennis, put it in service. Why did we do that? To start off, there's that old rule of thumb about sort of the 80-20 rule in terms of how many people are liking the idea of change. 10% of our staff maybe thought this was a brilliant idea, 10% thought it was a horrible idea, and 80% were very firmly on the fence. Decided maybe. And what we needed to do at that point in the process was get them more familiar with it. Let them crawl all over it. Let our staff and customers get a sense of what this completely unfamiliar idea would look like to them. Run it in our climate, especially, was a big part of that. We're very cold, have a lot of snow. I would say that after, before the project, 80-20, by the time we were done with the demonstration, I'd think we had the majority of staff into the, okay, yeah, I think this would work camp. Not everybody. I will share with you, even to this day, we don't have 100% of everybody on board, but we do have a consensus. A couple of tips for figuring out if you could do double-deckers in your community. What? Some of my colleagues, Bill and Lindsay, you can see in the upper hand corner with what is a very long yardstick made of PVC piping from Home Depot. For 30 bucks, you too can have this highly scientific instrument to gauge whether or not you have height clearance. Another good tip we got from Go Transit, if you can see the old GM, it has a little antenna in the picture. That helps us test the dynamic envelope. We came to call it the ant bus. Does it fit? Yes. Yeah, no problems. It does fit into our barn, existing barn. That's a key point. And it did fit under the Grote Road Bridge, if you're familiar with the Edmonton area. That's 6 inches of clearance. What we learned is there's no real rule, law about how much clearance is enough. It's what you're comfortable with. Nevertheless, we were relieved when Alexander Dennis introduced a slightly shorter version of the bus, and now we've got a full foot. We were so busy looking up, we almost forgot to look down. Weights and axle weights are critical if you're looking at this bus. We need 6,900 kilogram clearance on the front axle. The folks who run roads and take pavement condition very seriously, that was a big deal. Luckily, we were able to work with them and find a good way through. Customer feedback, very important. When we figured out the right way to ask our customers the questions, it really reconfirmed how important seating was to them and reconfirmed that that is the number one factor for them in our environment about what judges their satisfaction. We had an impromptu public event. We gave free rides in September 2010. We had 700 people show up. Way more than we expected, but very indicative of the response we've had so far. A little bit on the financials. By that point, we boiled it down to a detailed competition between double-deckers and Arctics. Our math really focused on meeting our customers' needs, and here it comes, central part of the focus. We wanted to know how many buses and how much resources will be required to provide seated trips to our customers. We gave the Arctics some credit for their higher standee capacity, but in our calculations, the math really created this overwhelming efficiency for double-deckers because double-decker might have 80 seats and Arctic roughly 60. That meant we need fewer double-deckers to carry the same number of people seated, fewer fewer drivers, fewer platform hours, less cleaners, less maintenance bays. All that stuff really piled up mathematically and created an overwhelming calculation and benefit of the efficiency. What we found in our calculations, we'll save 5 to 17% in operating costs with the use of double-deckers compared to Arctics. I do want to be clear, we're not slamming Arctics. We saw some fabulous vehicles from other manufacturers during our process. It really comes down to what do your customers want and what's the pivot point for their definition of satisfaction. We all agreed internally if we were running a BRT system, we'd probably been looking at Arctics instead of double-deckers because dwell time would have been more important, for example. Key result, our senior administration did accept our recommendation and we are implementing the double-decker buses. We expect a significant customer satisfaction increase. Mary, I have to confess, I'll have to come back in a year or two and let you know what actually happened because literally we're just doing it in the next few months. We also got the side benefit of greater efficiency, as I said, some saved cost, no additional fleet. We're replacing older buses with double-deckers as they come in, so the fleet stays the same size. No more drivers, no additional platform hours. And we had significant capital cost savings on the facility expansions. Arctics, we would have needed a whole lot more floor space. As you saw in the pictures, the deckers we could get inside in our existing barn, so we went up, not out. Celebration, very important. You can see our staff welcomed the first bus to roll onto our property. We were very happy about that. Michael Rochlow and Minister Rick McIver came and joined our council for awards ribbon cutting ceremony in August. Great to have them. Lessons learned wrapped up, some takeaways for you about change. Sometimes when we're trying to make difficult change with internal stakeholders especially, we get caught up in an argument about whose preferences are going to take priorities. By really focusing on that external point, what do the customers need, it really helped us get out of that rut that we sometimes got into, and all of us internally needed to bend a little bit on our preferences in order to do something great for our customers. If you're making an unprecedented change, don't be surprised if there's no roadmap. There was a lot of muddling through for us. We made mistakes, we had to go back, but don't be surprised if you're making change and it's not clear what happens next. That's normal if you're off the map. But like I said, and like others have commented this morning, there's a lot of help in our industry. Call them up. Folks at the other transit agencies were so forthcoming. It really helped accelerate our process. Timing matters. Between 2007 and 2010, I'll share with you, I had a very strong council that was okay with taking risk, and we got the project off the ground then. Between 2010 and a few months ago, maybe there was a not quite as functional council, and blame was a little more common. Risk aversion was high. I don't think we could have gotten it off the ground in that period. You may have a window of opportunity. You may need to strike when the iron's hot. You may not be 100% ready, but the window is there. You should take it. Stakeholder involvement early. Get everyone who's going to touch this project or have something to do with implementation on board at the very beginning. Try to take their concerns into consideration. Gives you a better product at the end of the day. You may not be able to get everybody on board, but at least you can demonstrate actively you sought to resolve the issues that they may have. Strong business case. We took all the negatives about complaints and inefficiency that we had before, packaged them up into a final report that we gave to our senior executive that was about here are all the positive opportunities. Don't worry about the complaints. Look at all the great opportunities there are to increase satisfaction. For the folks in the senior ranks, all day long they get deficiency reports and failure reports. It's very negative. To see something come in that gave them an opportunity to be a part of something really awesome that makes a difference in their community, I think that really appealed to them, turning a negative into a positive, I suppose. Finally, persevere. It took us 6 years to do this. We had 2 near-death experiences for this project and a lot, personally, of sleepless nights. But your customers are worth it, so please don't doubt. Fight the good fight. Keep going. In closing, a little final information. Our report, with all its calculations, are available online if you're interested. You can go to the Alberta Municipal Excellence Network, look under 2011 Strathcona County. You can get our full report and some nice videos. You can also email me. I'd be happy to send you a link. Special thanks to all our partners who helped make this happen. Alberta Transportation, nice to see them here today. City of Edmonton, Alexander Dennis, BC Transit, Go Transit, OC Transpo in Ottawa, Community Transit in Seattle, Las Vegas, IBI Group and Chris Prentice, CUTA and the Transit Cooperative Research Program, and of course, all of my colleagues at Strathcona Transit who put I don't know how many thousands of hours into this effort. Thank you, and I hope that our small example provides you with some interesting information and takeaways for making change in your community. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Matt. Those buses are drop dead gorgeous. And thank you for distilling those lessons in change management that I think we all recognize and can embrace. Really well done. Audience, we have 5 minutes left for questions, so please step up to the mic and pose your most difficult ones to the panelists here. I know that apart from the experts at the front of the room, we have lots of experts in the audience, so we'd love to hear from you.
I'll start then. Questions for Koji. I understand that your transit authority has a lot of investment from the private sector that helps you with your infrastructure. Is that true, or was it an initial thing, and is it ongoing?
To my knowledge, we don't have any particular capital funds or operating funds that come from the private sector. Our capital funding is from Green Trip, is what I know. The hybrid buses that we have came from a federal grant. And then we do have a hotel partnership program where we pre-sell our hotel passes, so the smart cards to the hotels, and that brings in a good chunk of revenue for us. So perhaps maybe that's where the cooperation funding? No, they haven't. I hope. Yeah, with the ski hill discussions that we're going to have, that's gonna lean more towards a private and a public, that 3P thing, that we want to go down that path a lot more. So we're certainly encouraging those discussions.
Very good, thank you. Others? So our panelists are going to hang around in case you want to come up and ask them questions. And if I could ask you please to fill out the yellow evaluation sheets before you leave, that would be much appreciated. With that, the session is adjourned. Let's have a final round of applause for our panelists.